In this session we're going to look at levels of strategy, and we're going to start by looking at product diversification. Now, when we look at a business, it's important to understand what the central focus of the business is. And the central focus of the business may be associated with the production of a given product. Perhaps it produces several products, or it may only produce the single product. So we can classify the business according to the importance of particular products within the business. We would say, for example, that a single product business is one that relies heavily on a single product, and that single product yields roughly, say, 95% of the revenue for the business. That would be a single product business. It may be that there are a couple of important products, or maybe two or three important products, but we would say that a dominant product would be one, let's say, that produces somewhere between 70 to 94% of the revenue of the business. That would be a dominant product, somewhere above 70%, roughly speaking. Related products, well, less than 70% of the revenue from a single product line, but the remainder of the revenue comes from related products. So, roughly speaking, less than 70% coming from a particular product, but the rest coming from linked products, related products. Finally, unrelated products. Less than 70% of the revenue from a single product, but the remainder of the revenue coming from unrelated products. So the business is producing a variety of products, and they're not necessarily related. But one of the products may be yielding a good return, but less than 70% of the revenue. We would say that's an unrelated product line. So we may classify a business according to the importance of its products, and in particular with respect to, say, one of the important products it makes. It could be a single product, it could be a dominant product, related or an unrelated product, according to those definitions. It's a rough and ready way of classifying a business, but the literature seems to suggest that many academics consider this to be a reasonable way of categorizing the importance of a particular product within a business. Now let's move to some levels of strategy. Well, as is covered in many of the other videos in this set, levels of strategy may run from the corporate, the business, the functional, and the operational. And we're going to have just a few words about each of these in this session. We'll start with the corporate level of strategy. Well, this must have a clear picture of the nature of the business. The corporate level of strategy covers the whole business, so it's important to understand the nature of the business. What's the core activity? What's the business doing? And it must also be the case that the business is aware of opportunities. The management is aware of the opportunities. It's looking at the entire business, so it's looking at opportunities for the business. It knows what capital it's got, what its expertise is, what are its core competencies, what it's capable of doing. So it's looking for opportunities to perhaps expand the business, or to diversify, to get rid of some of the risk of being associated with a narrow line of production. We may look at this as three areas of focus. For example, diversification management, which may mean the business is looking to acquire other businesses. The management's on the constant lookout for other businesses, perhaps in the same area of work, so that they may use the capital and expertise of the business to expand through the acquisition of other businesses. Or it could be that there is divestitures. In other words, it's going to sell off part of its business so as to focus more narrowly on what it can do best and thereby cut costs. So the management is constantly on the lookout for opportunities, ways of expanding the business, perhaps through acquisitions, or divestitures, looking at ways of cutting back on the business to focus more entirely on a certain range of products and thereby reduce costs. There are also, of course, opportunities for synergy within the business. Now, synergy means bringing together different functions, and the combined effect of bringing together these functions is to reduce costs more than had each one of them been looked at individually. So synergy is a way of generating increased efficiency. It's a way of combining resources in an optimal fashion, in a way which reduces costs and thereby gives the business more opportunity to expand or just simply to add to its rate of return. The management are always looking for investment opportunities. That's the nature of the business. The management must be aware of investment opportunities if it's going to continue into the long run. Businesses by and large do not make a one-off investment at the start and stay like that in perpetuity. Businesses must invest in new technology, in new ways of doing things, of new ways of processing output. It must look at its own structure. It must look at streamlining its structure, look at the introduction of technology within the administration. There's all sorts of investment requirements for a business to be successful in the long run. When we consider corporate level strategies, there are a few models around which we could look at, and these will be picked up in other videos in the series. But one would be to look at, let's say, the firm's status, ranging from critical weakness at the bottom to valuable strengths at the top. And along the horizontal axis, we'd have abundant environmental opportunities, and then we have on the right hand side critical environmental threats. So we have two axes here, and we'll just fill out this box to see what it means. Well, if we draw a line something like that, we could imagine concentric diversification. In other words, we could look at corporate growth in that area. The business has got valuable strengths and there's abundant environmental opportunities. So that's an area of growth. If we could identify the business as falling within this triangle, if you like, then we could imagine it to be an area of corporate growth. There are valuable strengths in the business and there are plenty of opportunities in the environment. If it falls within these tram lines, I'll just put the cursor onto the screen. If it falls in here, then we'd say, well, corporate stability strategies would be more appropriate, because there are critical threats down here. These are the critical threats area, but there are valuable strengths as well. So the critical environmental threats may be offset by the strengths of the business. So down here there are critical weaknesses in the business, but there are plenty of opportunities in the market. So you can imagine this as an area of corporate stability, where the business is moving along, but it's not doing anything very exceptional. And the final part would be corporate retrenchment strategies, pulling back, disinvestment, getting out of the business, looking for different opportunities elsewhere. Here there are critical environmental threats and critical weaknesses as well. So it's in the weaknesses section of the business, and it's up here in the critical environmental threats as well. So corporate retrenchment would be the order of the day down here. There are other ways of looking at this, and one that's cropped up in separate videos in the area would be the Boston Consultancy Group, the portfolio matrix put forward by them. This has probably been encountered in other videos in this series, but essentially what we've got here is anticipated growth rate on the vertical axis, on the horizontal axis market share, and then these quite famous boxes. We have stars, question marks, cash cows and dogs, and the attributes of each of these boxes, as I said, are considered in other videos, but it's worth looking those up and being familiar with them in the context of the present discussion. I'm not going to go into it here because it's covered more than adequately elsewhere, but if you're still a bit confused about each of those boxes, now is the time to do a little research on your own and make your own notes. Now let's talk about business level strategy. Well, 4 areas of focus. First of all, promote sustainable competitive advantage. Well, if there's a competitive advantage, try to make it sustainable. Try to make it in a way that it is not just a one-off or a piece of serendipity or a piece of luck that's come to the business, an opportunity that's come to the business that's one-off. Try to make it sustainable. Look at the competitive advantage and try to make sure that it can be replicated over time. It's important to develop and maintain valuable capabilities. Valuable capabilities is what the business requires. It needs to look at its strengths and being able to maintain its strengths. And to this end, constant retraining and constant reinvestment and constant critical appraisal of everything that's happening within the business is essential, so as to maintain its valuable capabilities. It's important to be aware of the environment and also to be capable of responding to environmental changes. The business can't fight the environmental changes. The environmental changes are what's happening around it. These could be political changes or social changes or technological changes. Well, the business can't do very much about those. What the business must do is accommodate them and concentrate on its own line of production and use the changes in the environment to its advantage. Look at what the environment requires and see if it can make products that meet those requirements. It's important to have the appropriate functional level strategies. It's important to have within the business the functional levels that are capable of bending and flexing to the requirements of the environment, being capable of adjusting quickly and smoothly to changes in the market, what's required by the environment and by the wider market conditions. So there are 4 areas that the business needs to absolutely ensure that it's up to speed on, and those are the 4 areas. Now let's talk about the functional and operational strategies. Well, functional is how the business level strategy is supported. So how is it supported? How is the business level strategy supported? Well, this is the functional area. This is what is internal to the business. This is how the business runs. It looks at all of the various departments within the business. And the operational is how are the functional level strategies supported. So it's necessary to have an accounts section, and a HR section, and a marketing section, and a production section, and so on. It have an R&D section. So it has various departments. These are the functional areas of the business. These are what are running within the business and which are feeding through to the corporate level strategy. But how are they supported? How is it done in practice? What's the operational level? Well, examples of these could be at the business level strategy, become a low-cost producer. So that's perhaps at the business level, become a low-cost producer. At the functional level, to meet this strategy, it could be reduce manufacturing costs by 10%. That will make it a low-cost producer. So the functional level will be looking to make economies, looking to make savings on the way it produces the product, how it handles raw materials, how it configures the machinery, or how it delivers the product. Or it's looking to make savings which will contribute towards the business level strategy. And at the operational level, it may be to increase worker productivity by a certain amount, say by 15%. So at the operational level, workers will become more productive, perhaps working on better machinery, working on more automated machinery, machinery with greater flexibility and greater productivity. So the workers are working in a more productive manner with better capital, better layout, better structure. They become more productive. Then manufacturing costs fall and the business level strategy is met. So the overall strategy of the business is fed through from the very micro level of the business. It can be traced right back to the productivity of the individual worker. And the more productive the individual worker is, the easier it is to meet the corporate level strategy. So these are the levels of strategy, and that's how businesses configure themselves to try and meet the various levels of strategy. So it runs really from corporate right down to the operational. And that's all I'm going to deal with in this session, so I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.